to the stream, Mr. Niko House. Hey, Niko. Oh, you're muted, hon. Hang on, let me unmute you. Oh, you got it. Hi.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, you're a little bit quiet. Can we get your audio up a little bit?
Am I quiet? I can try from my end, yeah.
Cool.
How do I sound now?
Good, perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Okay.
Well, I wasn't supposed to be on stream with you tonight, but I've ended up here. But I'm actually kind of glad about that, Niko, because previously you've been interviewed by Elizabeth Leah Voss, and I think also by Cassandra, was it?
Yes, yeah. I was supposed to be with you last month, but I was in the middle of a move. We had scheduling conflict. It was crazy. So
that I've got to give you props for that. That was the most committed effort of anybody to participate in the stream.
I was trying.
In the middle of moving house, you're literally trying on your mobile to root.
Yeah, literally my stuff was in the back of the car. It was still in the back of it. I hadn't finished unpacking.
That was amazing. Okay, I'm going to sit here and drink my water and calm down from my amazing interview with Bill Binney that I just got to do. And I would like to hear a big spiel from you, please, about why this movement is so important, why we need to pull together and help this man who's being tortured in front of the entire world.
Oh, man. So I would like to start by saying if anyone has any questions as to why the movement for Julian Assange is so important, there's two things you should observe. I actually did a video about a month ago that was actually outlining all the different instances that New York Times, Washington Post, FBI officials, government officials actually at that time it was the Democratic Party, pundits and commentators alike were all praising Julian Assange. Some saying he deserved the Pulitzer Prize, some calling him, not just an American hero, but an international hero. And it's interesting that now all of a sudden, they're all of them have changed their tune, or they just don't speak on it at all. And it's just really interesting how the narrative has just totally changed, obviously on the wake of the presidency of Donald Trump. So on top of that, I don't know if you all recall, which I'm sure most of you do if you're watching this, are we still live? Are we good? Oh, okay. But so essentially, we actually had in the States a situation where Trump met with Russia, and he probably gave the most prepared speech that I've ever heard Donald Trump give after the meeting with Putin. And what he said was that they wanted to work towards peace and that he wouldn't allow bipartisan politics to dictate the way he goes about international relations, or dealing with international relations. And the moment that our entire government decided to, and not just the government, but the pundits, CNN, MSNBC, the usual suspects, the moment that they all started to attack anyone who agreed with the idea that we should try and facilitate peace, that Trump should be trying to create peace instead of, foster just a dangerous environment as far as our relationship with Russia and North Korea and others. That should let you know that there's something seriously wrong here, and that they're painting scapegoats. Because if you're forced to deal with the tough questions, or if they're forced to deal with the tough questions, we may not like the answers that we get. Now, Julian Assange is important because he gives us those answers. He doesn't have to manipulate them. He doesn't have to strategically place them on the news and create propaganda or pass legislation in 2012 that legalized propaganda in America outside of wartime. I'm just saying, he doesn't have to do any of that stuff. He literally just provides what should be known. And that's why I think it's so important to continue to fight for him, because this is journalism. It's more of the reporting side of journalism, because his opinion is obviously left out because he's just printing the facts. But this is journalism nonetheless, and it's probably the most important brand of journalism, which is just 100% objective. These are the facts. take them as they are, and you as the people get to decide where to go from there.
So I've just had this incredible conversation with Bill Binney where we basically laid out the proof, the evidence that the intelligence agencies are lying to the overseers, that the politicians really are not running the show in terms of the national security state. And what that means is that our one vote every 4 years and our, every 2 years for the midterms or whatever, what does that really mean in this environment?
Yeah, as far as the politicians controlling our national, no, I think it's laughable. First of all, I would honestly suggest that 95% of our politicians actually have no clue what's going on internationally. I think that they don't know the difference between the Shias and the Shiites. I think they legitimately don't know what's going on in Israel, Palestine. I don't think they really understand what's going on in Venezuela. The brand, the type of what's going on in Venezuela, for example, is an oligarchical, corporatist dominated economy. And people don't think of it like that because all they hear is when Maduro and Chavez tried to introduce socialism, all they think about is socialism. But what happened is the corporations got control, just like we see in America. And now they're trickling in the necessities, but not things like food, but toothbrushes and deodorant. And so our government officials can intelligently convey what's going on in these nations, and it's clear that they can't. So what they do is they just they capitulate and fall back on what the quote unquote intelligence agencies assess, and then regurgitate that to the American people, and then the people just eat it up because they assume that's because someone can raise the most money. 94% of our elections are determined by who raises the most money. So they believe that because someone can raise the most money, that means that they are best equipped to talk about foreign relations or to give an analysis on foreign relations or even vote on anything regarding foreign relations. When you are just totally uninvested personally, but someone's paying you to say something else when it comes to international politics, then it just makes it all the easier for you to do that and do it with a straight face and not have a guilty conscience whatsoever. And so I think that's really what it is. The intelligence agencies, they get big they get big contracts, right? The big private contracts. Those same people who government create the government contracts also be in Congress and the Senate. And ultimately, they're the ones who end up determining the foreign policy. So weapons contractors and people like that.
So then where's the role of ideology in that? Because if we look at what the media tells us and what we hear in the political sphere all the time, it's all about, are you a liberal or are you a libertarian or are you a conservative or are you a progressive or are you a whatever? But in what we've just discussed, this paradigm, the true paradigm where the intelligence agencies and their customers and the big money power, their ideology is control. Their ideology is money, power, control. So
yeah, I mean,
what are all us little people doing fighting over ideology?
Yeah, it gets on my nerves too. I get really frustrated on Twitter and Facebook and some of the commentators. It's always but the Republicans are the fascists. And I'm like, really? Really? Because the Democrats haven't done anything fascist-like. And just because they don't have power does not make them in practice fascists, and it's because you're right. They all answer to one sign, and it isn't a D or an R, it's the dollar sign. And it is about control, because for the Democrats and the Republicans alike, in order for them to continue to rake in that easy money, and it is easy money for them, they spend the majority of their time campaigning and bullshitting. That's pretty much it. At a restaurant I work at, Marco Rubio was there because they were on recess, and I just see him with his entire family just eating a nice meal. Everybody in the restaurant I work at works 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. And this guy is here, and they're like, oh, well, he's here on recess. I'm like, this is a guy that shows up to work, 7% for the votes that are and people think that, well, here's the thing. People think that that's a uniquely Republican thing, but it's not. You have a lot of Democrats that do the same thing. They don't show up until it's that their lobbyists tell them, you better be there for that because we need you all to vote in favor of this. And it's usually, go to war, shoot down something pharmaceutical-wise or medical-wise. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to have to tell people like, y'all, for the most part, we're on the same team, but the childish libtard and the insults they throw at Republicans, like with the stereotypes, at least in America, that they throw at Republicans, like most of that stuff is manufactured to keep us divided. Most of the stereotypes get overly pushed to keep you divided and to make you think there's like a cultural disalignment on top of like the political disalignment. But most of us are fighting for the same things. Most of us don't want to waste our money, waste the country's money with pointless wars. Most of us are having to work 2 or 3 jobs. Most of us just want to put food on the table, be able to take our family out every now and then and enjoy our lives. But right now it's like we can't. And they keep using that duopoly and that left-right paradigm to ensure that we are stuck in this little, wheel, rats, complaining about who's worse, not who's better, because we can't have a discussion about who's better. And the media has made it like that in the States. So we have to discuss, who's worse. And in my opinion, they're all pretty bad.
I think you just completely nailed it. And that's very much to what we're trying to do with this movement, is to teach people that if we want to actually achieve something, if we want to actually make some kind of change, that we can't try and do that along ideological lines, because all we do is pigeonhole ourselves. And we limit our reach. We constrain our ability to have any impact or to make change if we only want to do it with little carbon copies of ourselves. So what we've been trying to do here, and I think we've done pretty successfully, considering if you chart the growth of the movements and the participants and speakers lists from month to month to month, we've grown exponentially, and also our audience has grown exponentially. And that's been because we're trying to teach people, rather than preach ideology and keep ourselves in these niches, how about we just find like one issue that we agree on, and that we were actually, now I'm hearing Lee Stranahan in my head, he was talking earlier, he said the common thread with these vigils is anti-war. We've got conservatives, but they're anti-war, and we've got progressives who are anti-war, and we've got all these different ideologies coming together because they're anti-war. And WikiLeaks is the quintessential anti-war organization, because that is the really what they're trying to achieve, and in some cases what they arguably have achieved in terms of
I would say that things would be a lot worse without WikiLeaks. Like we have to acknowledge like things aren't great, but like there's a potential for us to be at war right now with, like escalated tensions with Syria, escalated war with Syria. We could potentially be at war with Chad. There's just a lot of countries that right now, if Hillary Clinton was allowed to win, it would not be pretty for the world. It would almost be like closing the clasp on the necklace of destruction, because that's really what the last piece that was needed for the deep state, in my opinion, to take over 100%. Look, with the FBI agent, what he said about with Russia with the Uranium One deal, they already started building infrastructure in the United States because they were so sure that Hillary Clinton was going to get Uranium One pushed through years ago. Like, that's how connected she is. And without WikiLeaks, yeah, some of us don't like her, but that's not enough to like not vote for her in the face of what we believe is like obvious fascism. But like what we saw because of WikiLeaks, like, oh no, she's not just bad. This woman is pure evil. And she has an entire network of people waiting to cash in on that. And that is what we've prevented things from escalating beyond the point where we're like, it's like on kind of like boiling at the boiling point. And we're at that, the precipice of, is it going to tip over? Or are we going to be able to keep this contained and hopefully lower the temperature so we can get back to a simmer? And I think we're on the way, right? We're not beefing with North Korea like that anymore. With Russia, it's a back and forth. It's really the deep state versus Trump and Russia in that regard. And it could be Hillary Clinton versus like Putin, and that just wouldn't turn out well for anybody because any war is a profitable war, right? It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far into the Trump and Clinton, but I can say that I don't believe Trump's anti-war rhetoric at face value, because you see, him saying we don't need NATO and then agitating for NATO to get a whole ton more money than they otherwise would have had, and coming out even stronger than they may otherwise have been. At the end of the day, where did Trump go straight after he was elected? Oh, hello, he was rubbing the orb in Saudi Arabia and doing the sword dance.
It was weird. It was really weird. And it's crazy. And it's, once again, and that's one of those instances with Saudi Arabia specifically, right? And we talk about John McCain because, oh my God, John McCain is the biggest hero in all of the world now because he's dead. I don't really celebrate people's deaths, but I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people overseas who are glad to have that man out of their way. And that's just a fact. But as far as Saudi Arabia is concerned, right? And on the right, there's this big fear of like Sharia law. Like Sharia law is going to take over all the world. And they don't realize that Sharia law is like very, very, very specific to Saudi Arabia. Like it's like Wahhabism. And it's Saudi Arabia is like the only country that actively openly practices Sharia law. And yet their president is like best friends with Saudi Arabia, the country that's practicing the Sharia law that you're so scared of. And once again, that's just another tool that they use to fearmonger and divide. And when people are like, you're not worried about Sharia law? And I'm looking at like, are you serious? Is that a serious question? Do you even know what's going on? What's Sharia law? It's the Quran. No, you idiot. That's not Sharia law. Who told you that? Well, the Republicans, there you go. but now so the Republicans get to use Muslims and Islam against, they weaponize the idea that that's uniquely dangerous. But what are the Democrats turning around and doing? Well, we do have to pay a little bit of special attention to this investigation because they are Russian. I have a theory that I apply whenever I'm listening to these types of conversations on the news now, or just in general conversations. If you replace any of the adjectives or adverbs with black person, like, that person is black, like, and it sounds really weird, or if that person's Jewish and it sounds really weird, that's a conversation you should probably immediately stop having, or if you're on the other end of it, you should be immediately offended by. Like, when they say, well, we have to make sure we investigate further. We know that they work for a tech company and they're Russian, so you know what that could possibly mean. Like, if you say, they work for a tech company and they're black, so you know what that possibly means. Like, anybody in the world would be offended by that. And these tools on both the left and the right, once again, are constantly used against us when we all have, for the most part, a common goal, in my opinion, which is like what you say. Let's not go to war and die. I would appreciate it. I got shot before. It's not fun. It's not fun, especially for somebody else's war. So.
Well, I think you're spot on, Hillary Clinton. We definitely were expecting the tanks to be rolling in somewhere within 24 hours of her being elected. And we certainly did, like everyone, including Julian, think that she was going to be elected. So we're lucky on that front. And maybe now the conversations that we're constantly having about how disastrous Libya has been, if she had been elected, would have been a conversation about XYZ country that she was now rolling those tanks into. So I thank God for that. I believe it was going to
be Chad too. I truly believe it was going to be Chad.
Well, we see now they're in West Africa, and my discussion with Bill Binney about the Snowden documents, and another one of those Snowden documents, the NSA says that they are deploying the military to West Africa, and this is a direct quote from their documents, to secure an unimpeded flow of oil to the US and its allies.
Well, what's his name? Maybe it was Tillerson? I think it was Tillerson who did. No, it wasn't. It was actually Mattis, who was pretty open. He's like, okay, so we're going to stop lying to y'all about why we're going to war. It's competition based. It's based on economic competition. He actually came out and said that. The Real News covered it. So at least they're not necessarily lying anymore. But yeah, West Africa was always about oil. We don't want stabilized nations there. It isn't even about like taking out the problem with like Libya or well, just that entire nation, the entire area of West Africa. It isn't that they were like constantly beefing with one another, which by the way, they weren't really beefing with one another. In case you're wondering, they were beefing with our rebels that we paid to go mess shit up. Like, that's why they were constantly at war. You know when you're in a war that you can't win? It's because there's somebody with unlimited funding the other side, giving them weapons, giving them infrastructure. And there's only a couple of countries in the world that can do that, and it's really us and Russia that can do it and get away with it. And it's really us and Russia. And so, and it isn't Russia funding the other side most of the time, it's usually us. So, but yeah, West Africa, I'm really sure that it was going to be Chad. And the reason why I say that is because, Somalia or Sudan actually got taken off of the ban list, which was weird because they were previously on it. And then Chad was put on.
Because they allowed the drone bases. They allowed the drone bases and the drone operations on their soil. That's why they were taken off.
Exactly. And so, and you know, and that's like when you should get scared because people don't know that. So the leader of Chad right now, and I can't pronounce his name, but the president of Chad right now is actually the chairman of the African Union. Previously, unbeknownst to most people, it was Gaddafi. He was duly elected and they loved him, weirdly enough. This guy was actually one of Gaddafi's mentorees. They were really good friends. And the first thing that this man says when he gets elected to be the chair of the AU is, yeah, we want the West out. We want you out of Africa. Like, and he even started working with, I want to say, Theresa May to make that happen. And so once that happened, we were like, oh, no. Because while they want the West out so they can stabilize. If they stabilize, like Africa is a economically dangerous place when they become economically stable because they beat us 50,000 to 1 in almost every department, whether it be gold, whether it be diamonds, whether it be oil, whether it be manpower, agriculture, tourist economy. I mean, they have the power to lap us 3 times, which is why we're there all the time, if you haven't noticed. And that's why we're doing what we're doing in Africa. That's why you never hear about what happens in Libya after Gaddafi's out. You never hear about what's going on in Chad and Nigeria and Somalia. Like, we have a bunch of Somalians in America right now because the CIA is there right now, destabilizing the nation right now. We have refugees. And they never get talked about. They put them in like Minnesota and Vermont and New Hampshire where nobody even goes there. So nobody asks about them. Because if you ask, well, why are you here? They'll tell you. My country got destabilized.
God, that's just a whole kettle of fish in and of itself that I could talk about for a very long time. And I've had Anne Garrison sitting on my shoulder, this metaphysically, because this is her area of expertise. Anne Garrison from Black Agenda Report, and she will be on for a couple of segments later on tonight. And Niko, if you don't follow her work, you should, because it is entirely in line with the topics that you're just discussing right now. And she knows even exponentially more about that region than I ever will. So I will.
I get overwhelmed even reading into that. I mean, I'm definitely gonna listen. It gets so. I mean, I'm sure like reading in the leaks and the documents. It's like, oh my God, how do you even deal with this? Like, you feel helpless at some points, but then you realize that the reason why Julian Assange, just to bring it back, is so high on their target list is because he's winning. It's because we're winning. It's because he's effective. They don't have control anymore. They're like holding on by a thin, and they're really loud about what they do have control about. But light bulbs are always brightest before they bust. So, I mean, it gives me hope that they don't have as much control as they used to. If they did, we wouldn't probably be having this conversation right now.
Niko, what have you got to say to Julian?
Oh, man. Keep your head up. I would also like to know how the kitten is doing. I hope the kitten is doing pretty well. But, you know, keep your head up, keep fighting. It's at this point, I mean, what do you got to lose? They've already put you in a situation where you can be nothing but a martyr. And I don't want you to be a martyr, but just know that you've already won. That's why you're in the situation you're right now. You have become the deep state's most wanted. And holy shit, what a title. Like, you are somebody to be revered. You are somebody who will go down in history books. You can't be ignored anymore. They would have tried to ignore you. They would have glossed over your history. They've glossed over the additions, you know, that the contributions that you've made to not just American politics, but politics all over the world. But they can no longer do that. You are the game changer. And so, just like from a position of a journalist, you know, I greatly appreciate everything that you've done and everything that you represent to objective journalism. As a person who has a family and will have a larger family later on down the line, I appreciate everything you've done and all the sacrifices you made to make sure that my son or my daughter isn't forced to go to a war that isn't for any other reason other than for some rich old white guy to profit. So, you know, so keep the faith, keep the strength, keep the spirituality. And know that all of our energy is with you. We do, and at least I do think about you twice, 3 times a day. Obviously, I'm sure Suzie thinks about you more. And if you ever catch this, you better give Suzie the biggest hug that you have ever given anybody. Because the plan, the execution, how she created a plan. She mapped it out years ago. And she's executing it. And if you do get released, that'll be, a key reason as to why. And so, of course, Suzie, I do want to thank you as well for doing what you've done for him.
That's very generous of you and very kind of you, Niko.
Oh,
I'll pass on the hug from Julian. What I'd like to see is Julian hugging his mum.
Okay. So mum first.
That's my dream. That's my dream, is to see him with his family. Julian and I are friends, but we're not particularly close. What I do here for him is on principle. It's not for some deep personal connection. It's actually just purely on principle, because I believe that if we don't stand up and throw our weight behind him, it will be one of the biggest mistakes this generation could ever have made.
Absolutely.
So
you're going to go down in history. I'll tell you that. I don't know if you know it yet, because most of the time we don't know when it's going on, when it's happening. But
maybe it'll be for other reasons, and maybe in the long term, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay, Niko, I'm going to leave it there.
NSA's history book, so that counts.
Yeah, well,
I hope you're keeping the faith also, and just know that your efforts are greatly appreciated. People talk to me all the time. Terry Baines, you've been on his show previously, Voices. He was telling me just how much he appreciated your knowledge and how much work you put into this movement, and how many sacrifices you've made that I didn't even know about until I talked to him. So, well, I appreciate everything that you've done and everything that you contributed to this movement as well. It's just as every bit as important. You just happen to have internet, and Julian doesn't. So thank you very much.
That's super kind, but at the end of the day, I'm just one chick, and I couldn't even maintain the stream without the amazing tech team that we have. And I couldn't be, look, there's like thousands of tweets happening right now that I can't send when I'm on the stream, and there's everybody, truly, I'm not just trying to do the humble thing here, like truly. Absolutely. There's graphics, there's videos, there's communications, press releases, outreach teams, like translations in 20, all of this has come from
that's crazy.
The generosity of spirit of hundreds, if not now thousands of people working on it. And so I want to say thank you to those people, because those people are what is making this happen. And you, Niko, and everybody's prepared to stand up. And we are way over time now.
I wish I could.
We're so
over time. My bad.
I need to pass on. Actually, our tech team's going to run our promo video, because tomorrow, I'm not sure if you caught it, tomorrow we have our first ever Unity for J Day, where we have on the ground actions, people talking and singing and talking and marching and doing overpass banner drops and flyering and stickering and you name it, it's happening. So we're going to run our short, 46-second promo video for that. And then you, my friend, are going to be interviewing George Samuli.